The blue zones are 5 distinct areas across the world where the longest living people are thought to live. They have the highest amount of centurions and those that are living over the age of 100. And the only reason why they are called the blue zones is because in 2004, when researchers identified these areas, they circled them on a map in a blue pen. And so what I want to do in this video is have a look at what do these areas have in common? What do these people have in common when it comes to food and exercise? And there is a lot that they do have in common, so I think we can learn a lot from them. Let's begin. Hello and welcome back to the channel. For those of you that haven't met me yet, my name is Steven and thank you so much for joining. And today is a very interesting video because the blue zones are 5 distinct areas. They're not all together and yet they have so much in common in particularly how they eat, and they all have people that are living for a very long time. So they appear to be a very healthy and long living community, which I think is something that we all ideally want. So where exactly are these areas? Well, I can't exactly pronounce a lot of the towns, but the first place is in Greece, and it's not the whole of the country, it's just a small area in Greece. The second place is in Japan, and interestingly they have some of the longest living women in this area. Then we have a place in Sardinia, Italy, and then we have the community of the Seventh-day Adventists in California, and then lastly a small place in Costa Rica. Now, probably what's not surprising is that they eat very little to no sugar. They pretty much don't have any ultra-processed food, and they have very little, if any, dairy. They also have meat, but very, very rarely. They have meat only a couple times per month, and about around 95% of their diet is plant-based. So they're eating mainly vegetables, fruit, legumes, beans, nuts, anything that's really plant-based, including things like grains. Now, they also eat eggs and fish. They eat them more frequently than they do meat, but not every day, not as frequently as they are having vegetables. They have mainly water to drink, but they also have coffee, tea, and red wine. Now, the plants that they have are all locally grown. They're not really having anything that is batch or mass produced. So i.e. they're not getting meat or fish or eggs that have hormones pumped into them or antibiotics. The vegetables they're getting are locally grown, so they're not going to have the artificial pesticides on them or anything that makes them unhealthy. That there isn't the fruits or veg that's going to come from areas across the world, and then therefore you have to do certain things to them to make them last longer, etc. So these areas have quite strong communities, and if you saw my video previously on the 86-year-old study that I'll link at the end of this video, you would have seen the importance of social connections and our relationships, and that is also an important factor when it comes to health and long living. And these people tend to have fairly strong communities. They also have physical activity that is required from them because they're often involved in producing their own food. So whereas in the West, where physical activity is optional and we are motivated only to do it for our health, in these communities they have to do it and it's part of their daily life, which means that they are going to be way more consistent at their physical activity than we are. So that is a very interesting thing, I think, for us to learn, because if we can somehow input into our day physical activity that is required, we are much more likely to do it in the long term. I know for me that I go to the gym regularly, but I will still have periods, maybe a couple of weeks or maybe sometimes a couple of months, where I'm not doing as much physical activity. Maybe I haven't been to the gym for a couple of months because I don't always need to in the short term. I just know that I need to in the long term. But these communities, they have it inbuilt in their society. The other massive advantage these communities have is I don't think a lot of them have that much access to ultra-processed foods, to sugary foods, and these two things are one of the worst things for our health. For us in the West, we can do our best to avoid them, but sometimes it can be really hard to avoid them 100%, particularly if we want to socialize with other people. These foods are surrounding us. Every time we go to the supermarket, they are there, constantly tempting us. So they live in communities, I think, that makes them healthy, that really makes it hard to be unhealthy. And I think a lesson there for us is to be able to, as best as we can in the West or wherever you're living, to orientate yourself so that it's hard to live in an unhealthy way. So one easy example here, and this is what I do, because I know that if I buy unhealthy food, I will eat it. If I buy crisps or sweets or unhealthy chocolate, then if it's in the house, I'll probably eat it. So the way I get around that is I don't buy it in the first place, because in the shops, I got much better willpower to not buy those foods and only buy whole foods and good quality foods. And so it's by me surrounding myself with good quality food and much more money to eat those types of food. Now, as I mentioned, your relationships are just as important as what you eat and your physical activity. And I know I've talked loads about food and physical activity on this channel, but your relationships are almost just as important or arguably more important. And so if you want to learn more about this and the 86-year-old study that is still ongoing, then check out my video that I did recently just up here, and I'll see you over there. But just before that pops up, don't forget that you can get a discount 10% off Vivo Barefoot Minimalist shoes. Just in the description below, you can get 10% off Athenage, which is a natural superfood just specifically designed for men. You can get a free trial, so free bag of XL coffee, which is an organic coffee that tastes incredible, something that I have every single day, and 15% off Fussy, which is a natural deodorant that doesn't contain any of the harmful chemicals. I'll see you on this video here or my next one, so don't forget to subscribe to see that one, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.